So after a shooting incident in Minnesota, something pretty unusual happened. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, they sent out an internal legal refresher to all of their agents. And when you read what's in that memo, well, it tells you everything you need to know about which constitutional lines the agency knew its agents had crossed.
And let's be clear, this was not your standard run-of-the-mill training update. No way. This was an act of damage control. It was a memo sent out to forcefully, and I mean forcefully, remind agents about the absolute limits on their power, especially when they're dealing with U.S. citizens.
So what happened? What prompted such an urgent legal memo from the higher-ups? Well, it all kicked off with what really should have been a very simple traffic situation.
Okay, so here's the scene. Federal immigration agents try to detain a U.S. citizen. But why? Not for an immigration violation. Nope, it was because her car was blocking a road. And that right there, that's the detail that changes everything. This whole thing started as a traffic problem, not an immigration problem.
That one little distinction, traffic versus immigration, is the whole legal ballgame. It really forces us to look hard at the limits of an officer's authority. And it highlights the fundamental difference between a federal ICE agent and your local police officer. Their powers are absolutely not the same thing. I mean, the difference is just night and day. ICE and Border Patrol agents, they work under a very narrow civil authority. It's focused only on immigration violations. They just don't have general police powers. They can't handle traffic or public safety issues or other criminal laws. That's what local cops are for. So if we apply that rule directly to what happened in Minnesota, it becomes crystal clear. An ICE agent can't enforce traffic laws. They can't detain you because your car is blocking the road, and they can't start issuing commands about how to move your vehicle. All of those actions are completely outside their legal wheelhouse. And what that means is this, and this is the most crucial point. The second those agents decided to detain that citizen for a traffic issue, they were acting without any legal basis at all. They had zero authority. Their very first move was totally outside the bounds of their power.
You know, it seems like the CBP memo itself basically admits this. It immediately pivots to reminding agents about the First and Fourth Amendment, the very rights that were so obviously at stake in this incident. That's a huge signal that leadership knew exactly which constitutional lines got blurry.
The memo even gets specific about the Fourth Amendment, defining what a seizure is. And this is key. A seizure isn't just a full-blown arrest. It's any time an official restrains your freedom. The memo even gives an example, saying it can be as simple as an agent putting their hand on your car door handle to stop you from closing it. And here's where all connects. Because the agents had no lawful authority to be doing what they were doing, the moment they physically tried to control the situation by just touching her car door, that interaction became an unconstitutional seizure. The whole thing was illegal from that point forward. Now this leads to a legal point that a lot of people get wrong. If a government official is detaining you unlawfully, you have an absolute constitutional right to leave. The Supreme Court has been clear on this. Leaving an illegal seizure is not fleeing. It's you exercising your rights. The CBP memo even had to remind its own agents that passive resistance doesn't give them a green light to use force. Things like just not complying with an unlawful order, refusing to cooperate, or, filming the interaction, none of those are crimes. An agent can't just escalate to force because you're not doing what they say. And on top of that, the First Amendment protects your right to actually challenge their authority with your words, using profanity, arguing with officers, questioning what right they have to detain you. Look, it might make things tense, but it's protected speech. It can't be the legal reason for an arrest or for using force.
Okay, so this brings us to the final and really tragic legal concept that explains how this whole thing escalated so badly. It's a doctrine called officer-created danger. The idea behind this legal doctrine is pretty straightforward. An officer cannot create a dangerous situation through their own unlawful or reckless actions and then use that very danger they created as the reason to use deadly force. In Minnesota, after the illegal seizure started, an agent reportedly stepped right in front of the vehicle. Courts have a name for that. It's creating the exact danger that is then used to justify what comes next.
So when you step back and look at that CBP legal refresher, you realize it wasn't just some random list of rules. Every single point it made lines up perfectly with a key moment from the Minnesota incident.
The memo went over the narrow limits of ICE's authority. It talked about First and Fourth Amendment rights. It defined what a seizure is, and it spelled out that passive resistance and just arguing are not crimes and cannot be used to justify escalation. This is the exact kind of memo an agency sends out when they know their own policies and the Constitution were violated. So let's just walk through that unconstitutional chain reaction one last time. It all started with agents acting without any lawful authority. That action immediately led to an unlawful seizure. Because of that, the citizen had a constitutional right to leave. And finally, the danger that followed was created by the agent's own actions. The internal memo pretty much confirms the agency knows these rules.
At the end of the day, this internal memo is a clear admission of what the constitutional rulebook says, and it leaves us with one big, lingering question. When that very rulebook is broken by the people who swore an oath to uphold it, what does accountability really look like?